The Senate Hall of the Concord rose like a cathedral forged from cold stone and stranger metals, its vaulted arches climbing into shadow where banners of empires drifted in unseen currents. Every balcony overflowed with bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, whispering in 100 tongues, their voices weaving a living tapestry of disbelief and contempt. At the center of it all, beneath white-blue lights that seemed designed to expose rather than illuminate, stood one man. Captain Elias Ward did not look like much beside the glittering hosts that surrounded him. His fatigues were wrinkled from travel, a plain brown and green against the silks, armors, and scales that gleamed under the lamps. His shoulders were broad, his stance rooted in quiet defiance, and a pale scar curved from ear to chin like an old warning carved into flesh. He carried no weapon, no crest, no banner, just himself, steady as stone. His pale blue eyes swept the chamber, slow and deliberate, as if taking inventory of exits, shadows, and threats. Whispers followed him like knives. Primitive, fragile, unfit. Some voices hissed like steam, others clicked like teeth. To the galaxies gathered rulers and scholars. Humanity was an experiment at best, a contagion at worst. Ward stood and let their judgments wash over him. He had stood in worse storms. At the high dais, seated upon a throne of veined crystal, the Archon presided. Archon Sereth was not made of blood and bone as humans knew it. His translucent hands caught the light like water frozen in motion, his voice a harmonic resonance that pressed into the chest as much as the ear. When he spoke, the chamber bowed into silence. Let judgment be measured, Sereth intoned. Let the envoy of Earth be known by his conduct. The air thickened as the challengers strode forward. Varix Krull, war champion of the Vare Dominion, was twice the height of a man and armored in nothing but his hide, bronze scales rippling with cold light. Each step landed like iron striking stone. At his hip hung a ceremonial blade, though his grin suggested he would never need it. He was bred for war, and his kind had crushed rebellions on 3 continents before Ward's ancestors had left their cradle. He circled the human with the gait of a predator who already tasted blood. So this is the warrior your Earth sends? His voice rattled with mockery, echoing into every balcony. A soft animal in cloth. Where are your claws? Where's your steel? Your kind builds machines because your flesh is useless. Ward's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. His hands remained folded behind his back. Varix leaned close enough that his hot, acrid breath brushed Ward's cheek. Do you not speak, little mammal? Ward tilted his head slightly, his eyes unblinking. I'm just counting. The champion's reptilian eyes narrowed. Counting what? Exits, Ward said, voice flat. Always good to know. A ripple of laughter spread through the balconies, sharp and cruel. The Concord delegates scribbled on glowing slates, some noting the insolence, others puzzling over the strange pragmatism. Varix snarled, his teeth flashing like daggers. You dare mock me in this hall? Ward's lips twitched, not quite a smile. You make it so easy. The sound that followed cracked across the chamber like a breaking tree. Varix's hand lashed out, claws sheathed but force undeniable, and struck Ward across the face. The human's head snapped sideways, the pale scar along his jaw glowing red with fresh blood. Gasps echoed like cannon fire. Even Archon Sereth's luminous form shifted in his seat. Ward's boots, however, did not move. He stood as though rooted to the stone, spine unbent. The chamber froze, waiting for his collapse, waiting for outrage or plea. None came. He inhaled once, exhaled, inhaled again, exhaled. A third breath, steady as a drumbeat. Then his fist snapped forward with the speed of lightning, striking a lone tree. The sound of Varix's jaw breaking was louder than the slap had been, a sickening crack that reverberated against stone and banners alike. The champion staggered back, his massive body slamming into a column with enough force to rattle the banners overhead. Dark blood sprayed across the polished floor, a spray of defiance painting the pristine hall. Chaos erupted. Wings beat the air, tendrils writhed, tusked throats bellowed. Delegates shouted for retaliation, for execution, for explanation. The sound surged like a storm tide, drowning the chamber. Ward simply lowered his hand, shaking the blood from his knuckles. His expression remained unchanged, as though this outcome had always been inevitable. His voice cut clean through the uproar. "That's what we call," he said calmly, returning the favor. The uproar faltered, not vanished, but faltered, confusion and unease worming into rage. For in that moment, the human had not roared or postured. He had simply acted with chilling precision, a soldier's economy of violence. No waste, no hesitation, only response. Varix groaned from the ground, his mighty form reduced to gasping convulsions. He tried to rise, his blade clattering to stone, but only managed a guttural cry through his ruined jaw. The medics rushed forward, instruments flashing. Their urgency only underscored his weakness. Ward remained motionless, breathing evenly, eyes scanning the crowd once more. He looked not like a victor, not even like an aggressor, but like something far more unsettling, a man who had calculated and chosen. The Archon's voice resonated again, strained but commanding. "Order." Light pulsed from his translucent palms, silencing the chamber in a wave. He looked down upon the human, his gaze unreadable. But before judgment could be pronounced, before reason could reclaim the hall, Ward spoke once more, his voice carrying a weight that was heavier than threat. "We don't start fights," he said softly, "but we finish them. That's the rule where I come from." The chamber, for all its rage, could not disguise the tremor that passed through it. The galaxy had seen the human's violence. What unsettled them more was his patience. The 3 beats that separated insult from retaliation, mercy from ruin. And here is where I must leave you, listener, with the image of a scarred man standing unbowed beneath banners not his own. Remember this when the world tests you. Patience is not weakness. It is the silent rhythm before the storm, the heartbeat between insult and reply. 3 seconds can define you. 3 seconds can change the measure of who you are. The chamber had not yet recovered from the sound of Varix's jaw shattering. The echoes still lived in the stone, as if the walls themselves refused to forget. Delegates shrieked, clawed, beat wings against the air. Some called for blood, others demanded restraint. The banners of empires rustled in the turbulence, their colors blurring in the chaos. Captain Elias Ward stood unmoving in the center. He rolled his shoulder once, almost casual, as if the blow he had delivered was merely the correction of poor posture. Blood glistened along his knuckles, and the faintest bruise colored his cheek where the slap had landed. He seemed unconcerned by either. The Archon's luminous form rose from the throne, translucent hands lifted high. "Order." The word resonated with the weight of command, a ripple that pressed silence in the lungs whether one wished it or not. The uproar collapsed into uneasy stillness, the sound replaced by the hissing of Varix's strained breaths. The champion lay sprawled upon the polished stone, his jaw bound in the grip of alien medics who hissed into tubes and pressed glowing instruments against his wounds. His massive frame, once so proud, now twitched like a broken machine. His blade had rolled away, unnoticed. His pride had shattered as surely as his bones. All eyes turned toward the human. A tusked envoy from the outer tiers growled, his voice heavy with fury. "This is proof enough. Humanity is a danger. Admit them, and they will fracture our order with their savagery." A feather-crested scholar countered, his feathers trembling with conviction. "No, you all saw it. He did not strike first. He endured insult. He endured assault. And only then did he answer. Restraint. That was restraint." Arguments flared like sparks catching dry grass. Ward stood inside the storm, expression steady, as if he were the only one immune to its fire. Finally he spoke. His words were not loud, but they carried, threaded with something that commanded attention. "You've all seen what you wanted to see. Let me tell you what happened. He hit me. I hit him back. That's it. Simple as breathing." A crystalline delegate's voice rang like breaking glass. "You broke his jaw. This is diplomacy." Ward's lips curled in the faintest smile. "Where I come from, that was mercy. Normally we'd also take his lunch money." Confusion rippled across the chamber. Some beings blinked, uncomprehending. Others hissed at the insult. A small mammalian scribe furiously scratched notes, muttering about lunch money as some form of ransom. Ward continued, quieter now. "The truth is, I had 3 choices. I could stay down. I could walk away, or I could remind him that every action has a price. I chose the last one, not because I enjoy violence, but because my people live by a rule: we give back what we receive. The words hung heavy, far more dangerous than the punch itself. The Archon's translucent gaze lingered on him, unreadable. You speak of balance, human, yet your balance leaves another broken. Ward's eyes met his without flinching. And if I'd done nothing, you'd call it weakness. If I'd drawn it out, you'd call it cruelty. I gave him exactly what he gave me. No more, no less. You can call that whatever you want, Archon. Where I'm from, we call it fair. Varix groaned through his restraints, his broken jaws bubbling with incoherent curses. He tried to lunge, but medics held him down, his fury turning him into a beast unfit for the word warrior. His strength only made his humiliation more obvious. The chamber shifted. Where once the alien champion had been admired, he now looked unhinged, feral. And where once the human looked fragile, he now appeared steady, patient, dangerous in his stillness. Whispers spread. Some voices trembled with fear. Others carried something rarer: respect. Ward took a slow breath. His humor returned, a weapon sharper than his fists. And for the record, I waited. 3 beats. That's patience where I'm from. Some people meditate for years, trying to learn that kind of restraint. Nervous laughter bubbled at the edges of the hall. Some delegates glanced at each other, unsettled, unsure if this was bravado or revelation. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, besides, you haven't seen bad. You should meet Florida Man. Confusion deepened. The mammalian scribe scribbled furiously again. A feathered elder leaned toward his neighbor, whispering, Florida Man, is this their warlord? Ward's mouth twitched. Ask at your own risk. He makes Varix look like a house cat. Gasps. Unease. Some believed him. Others laughed nervously, but none could be sure whether he was lying. That was the point. The Archon finally spoke again, his voice quieter, almost contemplative. You call patience your weapon, and yet you stand before us as both accused and accuser. Tell us, human, do you believe this hall fears you? Ward's pale eyes swept the balconies, over feathers and tusks, glass and scale. He let the silence stretch, let them feel the weight of his gaze. Yes, he said finally, but not for the reasons you think. You fear what we might do if we lose control. You should be asking what happens when we don't. Because this, he tapped his own chest lightly. This is us holding back. Every soldier I've ever known has patience wired into his bones. If you mistake that for weakness, then you don't know us at all. The chamber grew still. Even the medics paused in their work. Something unspoken passed through the crowd, a shift in perspective too subtle to name, yet too heavy to ignore. Archon Saratha's gaze lingered long, his luminous hands folding slowly. Perhaps restraint is a sharper blade than arrogance, he murmured. The moment was fragile, delicate as glass. Any sound could have shattered it. And then Varix, broken but unbowed in his pride, gave a guttural cry and spat blood across the polished floor. The stain spread like accusation, black and defiant. The spell broke. Cries rose again. Accusations, demands, fears twisted into words. The storm returned with renewed fury. Ward stood still as the eye within it, but even he knew patience alone could not hold the tide forever. The Archon raised his hands again, light pulsing across the chamber, but this time the silence was not complete. The air carried an undercurrent of dread, of realization that the galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had expected savagery or collapse. Instead, they had seen something far more unsettling: choice. And now, listener, you must carry this moment with you. Understand that the world will strike, sometimes cruelly, sometimes without cause. You will bleed, you will bruise, and you will be watched for how you answer. The measure of your worth is not in avoiding the blow, nor in lashing back without thought. It is in the breath you take between. 3 heartbeats of grace can decide whether you rise a beast or stand a man. The banners hung heavy above the chamber, their colors muted by the smoke of incense and the blood still staining the polished stone. The echoes of argument clawed at the air, each voice desperate to shape the meaning of what had just transpired. Humanity's envoy had broken the jaw of a champion, and the galaxy trembled between condemnation and reluctant awe. Captain Elias Ward stood motionless. His posture was relaxed, but his stillness carried the tension of a bowstring drawn taut. He neither apologized nor gloried in what he had done. His pale blue eyes tracked the chaos like a hunter watching the movements of a restless herd. Archon Sereth descended from the dais, his translucent form rippling with cold light. He moved as though gliding rather than walking, his presence demanding reverence without effort. The delegates hushed in degrees, their attention magnetized to the elder's ethereal form. "Enough," the Archon said. His voice was calm, but within that calm lived something heavier than thunder. "The strike has been given," the counter returned. "Judgment must now fall not upon the blow, but upon the meaning of it." The medics had bound Varric's Krull's jaw with metal braces and humming devices, yet his eyes blazed with venom. He tried to speak, but only muffled snarls emerged. His humiliation was a wound deeper than any fracture. Where once he had embodied the pride of his people, he now seemed like a brute denied his prey. Delegates leaned forward in their balconies, tusks glinting, feathers bristling, crystal skins catching the light. Some waited to see humanity condemned. Others searched for the thread of dignity that Ward had shown, something they could not quite name, yet could not dismiss. Ward finally spoke, his voice low but unyielding. "You've seen what you wanted, but look closer. That wasn't rage. That wasn't frenzy. That was restraint. He struck me with pride. I answered with discipline." A glass-skinned envoy hissed, her veins glowing beneath her translucent flesh. "Restraint? You left him broken on the floor." Ward's jaw tightened. "And if I had done nothing, what then? You'd call my people weak. You'd call us prey. Prey doesn't last in this galaxy, does it? We're still here. That means we've never been prey." The silence that followed pressed like stone against every throat. Ward let it breathe before adding, softer now, "The truth is, patience is what keeps us alive. That's the weapon you don't see. 3 heartbeats. That's all I needed to hold before choosing." The Archon regarded him, studying not his words but the weight behind them. "And what of mercy, human? Do your people show it, or only balance?" Ward's lips curved faintly. "Mercy isn't what you think. Sometimes mercy is letting someone walk away with just a broken jaw. Sometimes mercy is not ending the fight when you could. That's what I did today." The words unsettled more than they soothed. Delegates whispered, scribes etched furious notes, guards shifted uneasily with weapons in hand. Yet beneath it all lingered the undeniable fact. The human had chosen restraint when arrogance would have demanded excess. The Archon raised one luminous hand. "Then let the record show this. Humanity strikes not first, but in return. Humanity waits, then answers. Humanity is neither lamb nor lion, but something in between. This council will deliberate on your admission. Until then, your presence will remain under my watch." The chamber erupted once more, but this time the storm was fractured, less certain, its fury weakened by doubt. Some called for exile, others for acceptance. The balance had shifted. Humanity was no longer dismissed as fragile. They were now seen as unpredictable, quiet until provoked, patient until pressed, then devastating in reply. Ward exhaled slowly. He had faced battlefields where the air was thick with cordite and screams. But this silent war of perception, was sharper, more dangerous. Every movement, every word was a blade, turned not on bodies, but on meaning. As the session adjourned, guards flanked him, escorting him through corridors veined with alien light. Behind him, the sound of arguments echoed like fading thunder. Ahead, the exit loomed, a doorway framed by banners of empires that had once looked down on him. Now, those banners fluttered as if unsettled by a wind no one else could feel. Outside, beneath the towering spires of the Concord capital, Ward paused. The alien sky stretched vast above, its constellations unfamiliar, its air tinged with scents no human childhood would ever know. He reached into his pocket, pulled free a crumpled cigarette, and lit it with a match that sputtered defiantly against the foreign air. Smoke curled upward, alien lungs recoiling from its harshness, but to him it tasted like home. He leaned against the stone, pale eyes reflecting stars not born of earth. His knuckles still ached, his cheeks still stung, but his mind was clear. He thought of the 3 breaths, the 3 seconds that had decided everything. One for patience, one for choice, one for consequence. The galaxy would remember the broken jaw of Varric's Krull, but Ward knew the real lesson was not in the strike. It was in the waiting. The patience had frightened them more than the power ever could. And now, you who listen to this story, carry its truth with you. The world will test you with insult, with pain, with cruelty delivered by those who mistake silence for surrender. You may be mocked, you may be struck, you may be pressed to the breaking point. In that moment, you will have 3 heartbeats to decide who you are. Patience is not weakness. Patience is the breath before thunder, the stillness before the tide, the measure of dignity between wound and reply. Hold your 3 beats. Choose well, and let the world learn, as the galaxy did, that silence can be sharper than any blade.